Getting into the hobby of flying RC planes has never been as easy as it is right now, and that's a great thing. However, there are still ways to go about it that could wind up with you not having that so great of a time if you're not careful with what you're doing. The good news is, if you're sitting here watching this video right now, you've already taken a crucial step in the right direction, and that is being willing to learn and maybe doing a little bit of research on a new hobby before diving in head first and potentially spending a ton of money. Congratulations. Welcome to the channel. I'm Alex from Hangar 14 RC, and I've had over 25 years of experience building and flying RC planes. Now that's not an exaggeration, that's no joke. I literally was flying RC planes before I could ride a bike. And I'd like to think that over those last 25 years that I've maybe learned a thing or two that I can hopefully pass on to you, an aspiring RC pilot or a beginner to the hobby, to help you out in your journey of getting into this hobby, because it is a ton of fun. However, there are some crucial mistakes that can be made, especially when you're just getting into it. So that being said, I wanted to give you a rundown of the top 5 mistakes that I see beginner RC pilots do. Starting with number 1, which is honestly probably the biggest mistake I see a lot of beginner pilots do, and one of the most crucial ones you want to make sure to avoid, and that is buying a plane that is out of your skill level. Now, when it comes to flying RC planes, maybe someone just got introduced to it. They saw something really cool online or in a video, or maybe they went to an RC event and saw a really cool plane. That's what they want to go and get right away. Now, I hate to be the bearer of bad news here, but you need to start simple. You need to learn to crawl before you walk, walk before you run, and then I like to add, learn how to take off and land before starting doing loops and rolls and all that sort of stuff. And starting with a plane that's actually designed to be a beginner-friendly trainer airplane is a great place to start. I know that's weird that it needs to be said, but I've seen so many times people get so excited about wanting to hop into the RC hobby, and they go out and they buy like a big RC jet or something like that, or a super scale warbird or something that's incredibly aerobatic, and then they just pile it into the ground in a matter of seconds, and they're like, this hobby sucks, I spent a bunch of money, it's wasted, I'm done with it, and they never pick up the radio again. And it's honestly sad, because this hobby is a ton of fun, and it is a great way to learn things and hang out with other people. So to see people discouraged so easily because they picked up the wrong plane in the first place is one of the reasons why I wanted to make this video. So what kind of plane should you be looking for as a beginner RC pilot? In my mind, what makes a good trainer airplane is anything with a high wing and a tricycle style landing gear, meaning it has 2 main gear and 1 nose gear. If you're to look back in the day, all the old nitro powered trainers, they were set up like that. The SIG Cadet Senior that I learned to fly on when I was 4 years old was like that. And the reason that those make great training airplanes is not only do they handle well in the air because of the high wing, they also do really good on the ground because of the tricycle landing gear, which is equally just as important, because you're gonna need to learn how to take off and land by yourself. Now, a lot of times when I bring up the topic of buying the right plane for starting out in the hobby, I get met with a lot of feedback that there are things like SAFE and AS3X and other stabilization and helping systems in a lot of planes nowadays, including warbirds and jets and pretty much everything else, that no, you can just go pick up pretty much anything that you want and learn how to fly it. And yes, you can do that, but it will be a little more difficult. And honestly, I don't think you're truly getting to learn the differences between those types of airplanes. What I mean by that, and I hate to sound like an old head here who's against this type of technology, because I'm really not. I have a bunch of planes that have that stuff right behind me. It's just that those systems tend to hide a lot of the characteristics of what makes those planes different from one another. Those systems tend to make everything feel like they fly the same once they're up to speed and can fly a circle pattern and that kind of stuff. When we get into unique situations like landing or taking off or doing aerobatics, those planes handle a lot differently. An F-16 handles completely different from a Big Stick or Extra 300 or something like that. Like, they're completely different airplanes, but because you can just go fly it with all of that technology and systems in place, it does tend to hide a lot of those characteristics. So what kind of planes does that leave you? Well, it leaves you with planes, at least as right now, like the FMS Ranger. I think that's a fantastic airplane to get started with. It comes with everything that you need to get started, and it does an incredible job, and it has some of those assists built into it as well. Other planes, of course, if you have a little bit more money to spend, want something a little bit nicer, would be, of course, the E-Flight Apprentice. It's one of the most popular for airplanes for people to get into the hobby as well, comes with everything. Or if you want something a little bit different, a little more unique, I'd recommend the Hobby Zone Aero Scout. But again, all three of those planes have the same thing: high wing, tricycle landing gear. With that though, I think it's important to have a plane in mind that you want to get to. It's important to set those goals, right? Have something to work towards. So if you really want that really cool jet or that warbird or something that can do 3D aerobatics, set that as your goal, work your way up to it. That way, when you do get there, you're going to enjoy it a lot more, and you're gonna have a lot more peace of mind because you're probably gonna know a little bit more of what you're doing versus just hopping into it right away. So that's a big one. We got it out of the way. We ripped it off like a Band-Aid, so now we can move on. So mistake number 2 that I see a lot of new pilots make is ignoring proper setup and calibration. This is a huge thing, especially with how many planes come ready to fly or bind and fly nowadays. Very important that you still go through and make sure that everything is set up correctly for a couple of reasons. One, the last thing you want to do is spend all this money, trust that it's put together well, throw it up for the first flight, and then realize that a control is backwards, or maybe something wasn't tightened down the way it should have been, or maybe you forgot to plug in a wire when you threw the wings on. Always do a little bit of a pre-flight before you go flying. Make sure things are going the right way. Learn which way those control surfaces should be going, and make sure you have some safety things in place too. Things like a throttle cut is super important with these electric planes. Yes, they are in a sense toys and they might be a little bit smaller, but those plastic propellers can mess you up, especially if you accidentally bump the throttle wide open. So make sure you have some stuff like that set up. Make sure you go through and calibrate your plane. Just learn what your plane is. I promise you, you won't regret learning just a little more about what you spent your money on to make sure that that investment is actually going to do what you want it to do. Mistake number 3 is going to be going flying in bad weather. Now, this again may sound like a no-brainer, but you get excited when you get into the hobby of RC flying, or even get a new plane and all you want to do is go fly it for the first time. It's like, oh, maybe I can deal with a little bit of wind, or maybe a little bit of rain, or maybe it is a little foggy, but I'm just going to go fly it anyway. Wind and visibility are huge factors, especially when you are first learning how to fly. Wind can really blow those planes around, especially if you have gusting wind or crosswinds. It can make takeoffs and landings unpredictable. It can start blowing your plane around in the sky. No matter how much stabilization or safe assist you have in the plane, it's going to act different. Visibility, on the other hand, if you have a low ceiling or if it's foggy outside, you can lose orientation pretty quick. Maybe you want to go flying after work. It's getting a little later in the day. Maybe it's a little dark out, but I think I can still see it. It's probably going to silhouette on you. Like, all of these factors are things that don't really pop into your mind because you're just really excited to go flying, which I get. Been there, I've done it, and sometimes it just doesn't turn out the best because you lose orientation of the plane, or you just panic because you don't know what's going on. It's getting blown all over the place and you don't know how to handle it. It really comes down to, honestly, aeronautical decision making, just like the real pilots do. Make sure you're looking at the weather. If it's too windy, make that decision of go or no go. I would definitely recommend flying on those really nice calm days for your first few flights, so you can at least get your feet wet and then start learning how to deal with wind. I think flying, especially with wind and crosswind, is an important thing to learn how to do because it can change at any point. No matter what skill level you're at, it's an important thing to know how to deal with, but it can be a pain in the butt when you're first learning how to fly. Mistake number 4 kind of goes along with that decision making, and that is not giving yourself enough room to fly. You're going to be learning a lot, especially as you're getting into this hobby. And the last thing that you're going to want to have to worry about when you have, a couple $100 plane in the air is running into something or someone. That's a great way to not have a fun time. So give yourself plenty of room. Make sure that where you're flying doesn't have any obstacles, that you're not flying over someone's house or someone's vehicle in case of an emergency. Give yourself room. Trust me, it's the last thing you want to have to worry about dealing with, is trying to figure out what's going on with the plane and then a tree or something coming into sight really, really quick and you start panicking. My recommendation here, do some research, see if there are any RC club fields around the area. That would always be my #1 recommendation. Otherwise, go see if you can find a big open park. Maybe there's not a lot of people around most of the time, or you have a nice area away from everything that you can safely fly your airplane. And finally, mistake number 5, and I think this is another big one, and that is not being willing to take advice from other people in the hobby, or just not being willing to learn. I've been doing this hobby for a long time, like I said, and I still learn something every time I go flying, or every time I go hang out with my friends, or every time I put together a new airplane. And I think that's important. It's part of what makes the hobby fun. You never stop learning with this hobby. It's been around for a long time, like a long time. People have been doing it for a long time as well, and some of the insight, even though they might be some grumpy old dudes at the RC field who don't like foam planes or the fact that AS3X even exists, they still have some stuff to bring to the table. They still have a ton of knowledge. I grew up flying nitro-powered airplanes, but the last time I went out to the field, I had to have one of the guys help me tune my engine out because I was just having issues with it, and he taught me a ton that I thought I already knew. So even though you might have just had some fantastic first flights, you're feeling really good about yourself, you got the plane back in one piece, don't be afraid to talk to the guy that wants to come up and give you some advice after those flights, because odds are you can still learn a thing or two. Never stop learning in this hobby. That is honestly probably one of my biggest piece of advice that I can offer, especially after doing this hobby for so long. Always talk to the grumpy old guys. They just want someone to talk to, okay? And hopefully you've been taking some notes. Hopefully this helps out in your journey if you're just looking into getting started flying RC planes, or maybe even building your first RC plane. Welcome to the hobby. We're more than happy to have you. If of course you have any questions on anything, or if there's something you'd like help answered, please let me know down in the comments below, or shoot me a message on Instagram or wherever you find me. You can find all my socials linked down below, and of course, don't forget to subscribe. I'm Alex from Hangar 14 RC. Good luck out there. Again, if you're looking to buy your first airplane and take it up for your first flight, you're gonna do great. It's gonna be a little terrifying. You're gonna get the jitters, but I promise it's gonna be all right. Thanks again so much for watching. We'll see you later.